the wonderful news is that the current version of the TOEFL IBT that exists is available still to be taken. As you know, it's 3 hours in length. And if you could please bring up my first slide.
I will do that. But before that, though, a couple of questions on the TOEFL itself.
Sure.
Some of our students want to know about the TOEFL, in which countries are TOEFL scores accepted, and then we can dive into the test as well.
Certainly. Well, I'm very pleased to say that we're accepted in over 160 countries worldwide and have been really since we started the test in 1964. So students can take it in test centers around the world. And we also, since 2020, have made available the options for students to be able to take the test virtual in their own home on their own computer. So students have the opportunity to test wherever they're located and then apply for admission. So we have over 12,000 organizations, universities, fellowship programs that accept the TOEFL scores. So it is an outstanding entree into higher education.
Absolutely. I still remember my first TOEFL, and this exam has totally stood the test of time. So over to our next question, and this is about the exam pattern and how it's changed. So they want to know when the change kicks in. Will the material that they need to use to prepare also change? Is there an option to take the test in the old pattern? So let me switch to your first slide about the enhancements to the test. I hope you can see the slide, and please go ahead. Yes, we are on the enhancements slide. So this is the so here you have about the TOEFL, about the home edition, the paper edition, the starter test. If you can see my screen, I'm sharing the slides on the...
I actually cannot, but I know the order of my slides, so I'm fine to go ahead. So we rolled out the changes that you see on screen now, starting in 2019 to the current version of the test. And we'll continue to offer this 3-hour length TOEFL IBT test, both in the test center and at home, with all of these enhancements through July 25th of 2023, so this year. So anyone that's currently registered for the test, you're fine to go ahead and take it. You'll find that all of the test prep materials in support of the 3-hour test are still available online and will continue to be until July 25th. Next slide, please.
Yes, there you are. And now about the test taker experience on the new TOEFL.
Yes, so we are going to roll out even more enhancements starting on July 26th, 2023. And right now, the registration is open for students who want to take the test from July 26th throughout the end of the year. So don't feel as if you have to wait. We actually introduced test prep for the changes in April of this year. So currently available is test prep information for the new version of the test. And actually, all we changed was one particular question type. In the writing section, we were able to change one of the questions from the independent task to writing for an academic discussion. And we were able to take a look at the test overall and make some additional changes. And this next slide will highlight those.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is the test taker experience slide.
Right. So we reduced the testing time. The test that will begin on July 26th is going to be under 2 hours in length. So we're going from 3 hours currently to under 2 hours in length. And a lot of that stemmed from the feedback we were hearing from test takers, especially who were taking the home edition of the TOEFL IBT, and found that their internet connectivity was strongest if they were testing under 2 hours. And we thought, let's see what we can do to give students the best opportunity to have the best technical experience while they're testing. So we were able to streamline the registration process. We are going to offer more score sending transparency. We reduced the overall testing time by also removing any pre-screening questions that we had. So the test questions that were always in the test that were never scored, but were giving us feedback about whether or not that potential test item could work in a future exam. We removed all of those. The instructions for the test are much clearer and concise. And we were able then to shave a good hour, a little bit more than that off the test. You'll see that we're also going to offer AI scored mobile practice sets, which means you'll be able to use your mobile devices to get instant feedback on the practice test in all 4 skills, which is not the current situation. Our practice tests that are available online for the 3-hour test currently only give you feedback on the listening and the reading because those are passive skills. So we are trying to give you a better test taker experience that way. And then with the improved home experience, there again, we're trying to make the technological aspect run smoother for you. And I highlighted again some of the aspects that we know by reducing the total testing time is going to greatly increase the capability of you being able to not only begin, but complete your test successfully in the appropriate amount of time with full internet connectivity. Next slide, please.
Yes, this is the reduced test time.
Very good. So this slide specifically calls out the amount of time in the test that we're going to launch come July 26th. So when we look at the reading section, you'll now have 20 questions that you'll answer in a total of 35 minutes. Listening, there'll be 28 questions that you'll answer in 36 minutes. Speaking, you'll still have 4 tasks to complete, so that will be the same as before. And it'll be 16 minutes in duration, again, the same as before. The writing, though, as I mentioned, there'll still be 2 tasks. You'll still have to write 2 essays, but one of them will now be the writing for an academic discussion, which means that you'll still hear a student and a professor talking. You'll still read a bit of context of what they're discussing, but now your writing will be a contribution to that conversation, which is much more indicative of what you'd experience in a classroom situation. So that's why we decided to make that change. And my last slide that we'll go to now talks a bit about, more specifically, the changes between the current version of the test that is available now through July 25th and is 3 hours in length. Many students are concerned that the test prep material that they have for that test will not work for the version that we have come July 26th. And that's not true. If anything, you'll just get more practice because there are additional questions. The only thing that would be different is it is beneficial to you if you're going to test July 26th or later on the test that's a little bit under 2 hours in length. You want to make sure that you're using the writing practice sets with that new essay question. And when you go to the TOEFL website, you'll see there's a pop-up box right away that you can click on to take you to the page that talks about all the enhancements. There's a very quick, under, I think, a minute of video giving you a demonstration of what that new writing task is like. And every 2 weeks between now and July 26th, we're introducing new practice essays for that writing for an academic task. And right now, if you go to that website that will pop up, you'll see that there are already 14 practice tasks online for you to try. So definitely feel free to visit it, become aware of it. Even those of you who are currently registered to take the test before July 26th, it might be interesting for you to see what the difference is. And depending on your application timeframe, you might be able to consider taking the reduced time test come July 26th, or if your deadlines for admission or fellowship are coming even closer, you should stick with the current appointment that you have already scheduled. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And I think this slide really lays it out perfectly, right? The before and after. And, you know, it dispels all the concerns, right? And helps the person take the decision. So thank you very much, Michelle. This has been extremely helpful. And now we would like to speak with your colleague, MT. She is an expert on the GRE, and the GRE is also undergoing changes like its sibling exam. MT, would you like to share your video, and we can answer some questions that students have, beginning with their first question, which is, what are the recent changes made to the GRE exam?
Sure. And first of all, let me say thank you for having me here. I know we're coming up to time. JR, you made me reminisce about my days back at Lehigh. Felt good. Michelle, wonderful information about what you are doing with the TOEFL, and what we're doing with the GRE it just aligns so beautifully with the TOEFL. So some of the things that you'll see in terms of changes with the GRE, a very versatile assessment, is that beginning on September 22nd, 2003, the testing time will be reduced by half. So it's under 2 hours at this point. The questions in the verbal and the reasoning sections will also be reduced. And like the TOEFL, we're taking out the unscored section. We're also taking out the 10-minute break, which was appropriate for a 4-hour test. Now that it's under 2 hours, it's no longer necessary. And the writing test, there were 2. There will be only 1 writing test now. We thought it was really important to keep that writing piece with the advent of ChatGPT. This is the only time that the application committee can see, or the admissions committee can see, a true sample of your writing ability. And if you're not taking the TOEFL. So this is a crucial piece that we're keeping, but we've reduced it from 2 tasks to 1 task. And finally, another good piece of news is that the turnaround time for receiving your scores will be reduced to 8 to 10 days from 10 to 15 days. So a lot of really cool things happening that are very beneficial to prospective students like yourself. Like the TOEFL, the materials that you're preparing for the GRE now are virtually unchanged, so you can keep preparing with those same materials. We will be introducing some new materials that are reflective of the newer assessment, but the content is essentially the same. So what you're doing now, just keep on keeping on. It is just, oh, there's everything I just talked about. So that's a quick overview of what is changing with the test. So if you want to move to the next one. And like the TOEFL, as Michelle mentioned, currently there are 2 essay tasks. Now there is 1 essay task, so that shaves the time down from 60 minutes to 30. Verbal reasoning had 40 and now has 27 questions. That reduces the time from 60 to 41. Quantitative reasoning, it's always the one that people are most concerned about, is now down to 27 questions from 40, and from 70 to 47 minutes. As I mentioned, the unscored section is gone, the scheduled break is gone, and it's going from 3 hours and 45 minutes to just under 2 hours at 1 hour and 58 minutes.
Yeah, that's a gigantic reduction, and I'm sure students will feel, that much less stressed.
It is certainly something that is going to impact the level of stress, plus your endurance. is a little bit less in a 2-hour test versus a 4-hour test.
Absolutely. So
And
thank you for that.
next
And this is
slide.
what's not changing.
Correct. Sections don't change. It's the same skills and the same construct. The same strong quality and security is there. Question types don't change. It's especially important for schools to know that the score scales will remain the same. So they'll be able to assess you on the same levels as the previous test. Pricing does not change, it is the same. And the same accommodations are available for anyone who has a disability or a health-related need. So, and I want to also make the point right there that regardless of whether or not you're taking the at-home test or at a testing center, all of these things are identical. So if you need accommodations, you can request those accommodations if you are taking the at-home test, as well as if you're taking it in a test center.
Excellent.
Next. I guess I was pretty succinct before, because all of those question types, since they are the same, means that you can use the same materials that you currently have. You're in really good shape if you've already started prepping, because it is everything you've done will have the same impact. It's just a really good way to get a head start. And the practice tests for the shorter tests will be available in September. The test prep resources are available now for the current test, but we'll certainly do double duty for the new test as well.
Excellent. Great. Which test should one take?
Well, this is a really good question. And a lot of the answer here is really subjective in terms of what your plans are. So if you're planning to apply for your program in that first week of October or even sooner than that, stick with the current general test, simply because you will have it done in enough time to submit it for a completed application within the school's deadline. If you are taking a test or applying a little bit later, then you can put off taking the test until after September 23rd. So those are I mean, you could take either test now, especially if the deadline is after October. But generally, you would take the new test after that.
Excellent. So the application deadlines are the criteria that we have to use. And just want to add something here that sometimes students are not aware of, that many universities have a regular deadline and a priority deadline. And if you plan to apply to the early deadline or the priority deadline, and if that is earlier, then you're better off taking the current GRE. So
that's absolutely true. Right.
Excellent. So this is a question, or MT, that it's about, there are some colleges and universities that mentioned during COVID and right after the pandemic that they would make the GRE optional, or they would actually not even require GRE scores. But now what we're seeing is the GRE score requirement is back. Can you tell us what happened and why?
It's true. And we all know, especially here in the US, that many, a vast majority of schools waived the GRE or put in other waiver eligibility programs for those people who wanted to apply because of the inability to get to a testing center. So that's changed now that the pandemic is, I'm afraid to say over, but that has less of an impact. I think schools found that they were perhaps less able to ascertain the ability of individuals coming into a program, particularly those that had strong requirements on the quantitative side, if there were no measures there. And I think the other big piece is that taking an assessment like this, like the GRE, sends a huge signal to schools that you are really preparing yourself for that next academic experience. That is an important aspect of retention when schools are looking to admit students. They want to be sure that the individual they admit is going to stick around and is going to be successful in the program. So I think there may have been some experiences with some schools that perhaps were not as favorable in that area, and they have decided that the objectivity that the GRE provides is something that they want to welcome back into that application process.
Now, thank you for that very important point on objectivity, right? Because we see that universities within a country or even within a state have such varied styles of grading, and there's nothing like the GRE to actually bring a certain uniform way of measuring students' abilities, right? And that is something that universities will definitely look for. And we did find that a lot of our own students at Galvanize, when they applied to universities, and we told them, hey, you have to take the GRE, and they said, well, let me try without it. But then when they heard back from the university saying that actually you need to take the GRE for this program. So things are changing on the ground, and we're definitely seeing that GRE is now way more popular, and
it's such a good
deservedly
point.
so.
It's such a wonderful point, because that objectivity is so crucial to leveling the playing field. And with the differences in backgrounds, in terms of academics, in terms of the quality of the universities, just in terms of the experiences that prospective students have, having this objective measure is absolutely crucial.
Oh, great. Here's a quick question on the difference between taking the GRE at home test and taking it at a test center.
And I will answer that very quickly. There is no difference. Everything is the same. The cost is the same. The experience is the same. The content is the same. The accommodations are the same. There is nothing that is different from going to a testing center to taking it at home. For some people, it might be more comfortable for them to take it in a testing center. For others, it will be more comfortable for them to take it at home. But it's the same. It's the same test.
Understood. Here's a question on how to pay for the test. Should we, when we register for the test, should we pay with our local currency, or must we pay in US dollars?
You can pay with your local currency, and there is a site. In fact, let me put it in the chat, just because it is going to be easier to reference. Hang on one second. And I think that will give you a pretty good sense of where to go for more information about how to what the fees are and what it is that you need to be prepared for.